Welcome back to the MANN channel. Alright, so this video is going to be the 29th episode of the Wakeboat Ownership Series. And in this video, I'm going to talk about hours on a boat and basically break down my feelings on when a boat gets to a point that I feel it may have too many hours, which I actually think is circumstantial or depends on the circumstances for every single boat. And I did make a video where I compared boat hours to the mileage on a car. So I'll put a link to that video right here in case you want to check it out. But in the end, a car or a truck, as opposed to a boat, they are vehicles that are used in entirely different ways. So it really isn't comparing apples to apples. So this video is really meant to share my experience on owning several different wake boats and the amount of hours that I bought and sold them with, and basically the level of hours where I might be concerned. So before I jump in, I want to let you know that I'm going to do a giveaway with this video. I'm going to go ahead and give away this hat. It does have my OG logo on here, the original MANN logo. It's a gray hat. It's not a mesh back, just a normal snapback hat. And all you need to do to enter to win this hat is comment down below and tell me something about the video or this hat, and leave your Instagram username, because that's how I'll get a hold of the winner. And I will pick the most liked comment 2 weeks from the published date of this video. If by chance there's a tie, what I'll do is I'll take those top comments that are most liked, that are tying, and I will do a random name pick from those if they all qualify. For example, if one of those people left out their Instagram username, and it ties with somebody who did put their username, then I'm gonna pick the one that put their username. So make sure you do it correctly. Okay, so I'm gonna break this video into 3 parts. First, I'm going to talk about some examples of boats that I've owned that I bought with hours on them, and then what the hours were when I sold them. And then I'm gonna talk about whether I would buy a newer boat with more hours or an older boat with less hours. And finally, I'm gonna end the video by giving you my opinion on what level of hours on a boat I think are too many. Okay, so I'm going to start off by giving you my first example. So the first wake boat that I ever bought was a 2007 Malibu 23 LSV, and I bought it with 200 hours on it. And I had owned a boat prior to this. It was just it was a Sea Ray. I think it was like a 200 Sport or something like that. 2005, but the 2007 23 LSV was my first wake boat. Now, when I bought this boat, the boat had mostly been stored outside with its cover for most of its life, and I bought this boat in 2011, so that would be approximately 5 or 6 years. And I made the deal over the phone. I didn't actually see the boat until I was there to pick it up. I hadn't paid for it yet, but when I did arrive to look at the boat, I would say I was slightly disappointed. It wasn't my first time buying a wake boat, so I have a lot more experience in it now, and looking back on it, I probably wouldn't have been quite as disappointed. But the exterior was in good condition. The interior wasn't in ideal condition. The vinyl kind of had dirt ingrained into it. There was a couple of patches on the back where you could tell it had been sitting out in the sun, and the glue kind of showed through the vinyl. And it had a couple of nicks in the vinyl, and some of the seams were starting to pull apart a little bit, and it had carpet in it. So it was just kind of dirty, and it really showed signs that it wasn't taken care of really great while it was owned by the first owner. And mind you, this boat got 200 hours on it over the course of 5 or 6 years, which really wasn't that many hours. If you think about, that was less than 50 hours a year. And in the Northwest, I bought it in Washington. I live in Montana. In the Northwest, it is typical to put 40 to 50 hours on your boat a year. That's kind of the average. I ended up going ahead and paying for it and bringing it home, and I actually worked pretty hard on scrubbing it, cleaning it up, fixing some stuff on it. I actually fixed the spots where the seams are kind of coming out. There was actually a latch on the back where the vinyl was coming out from beneath it. I fixed that. I actually took those patches where the glue was showing through, and I took vinyl paint and fixed those, made it look really nice. So I actually took it and made it work really well, and actually kind of turned it into better value for myself. And I've always stored all my wake boats inside. So I actually then put 400 more hours on that boat over the course of 3 seasons. And by the time I sold it, it actually still looked better than it did when I bought it. So in this example, what I wanted to express is that a lot of my concern when buying a boat that has hours on it is going to mostly surround how well it was kept and how well it was maintained. So you could very easily be tricked by a boat that has lower hours, but that was not stored indoors and just wasn't taken care of well. So my next example is a 2014 Malibu 23 LSV that I bought from the dealer, and it was their demo model. It actually had 65 hours on it, and in that scenario it was practically brand new other than the fact that it had been driven a bit, and it came with the full warranty because it hadn't been registered to any owner yet. So in that scenario, having a few hours on it actually created a good opportunity for a bit of a deal, but also really good peace of mind. And to just kind of switch back to the 2007 that I bought, it was, even though that boat wasn't taken care of well, it did end up being a good opportunity to get that boat at a better price. I actually did get it at about 10 grand off of what it would normally go for because it did not show well. But anyways, so my 2014 23 LSV I got with 65 hours on it, full warranty. I ended up putting 2 seasons on that boat and about 300 hours on it. But when I sold that boat, the new owner had no problem with the 360 some hours I had on it because it showed so well. I had done really good maintenance on it. I stored it inside. I took really good care of it, which is what I've done with all my boats. So now to move on to my third example, my 2019 G23. That is the boat that I had for this season. I specifically bought this boat because I put a 2022 G23 on order, but I knew I'd need a boat for the 2021 season, or at least half of it. So I actually bought my 2019 G23 with 184 hours on it, and I ended up putting about 80 hours on it. So I ended up having 260 some hours on it, and it was actually in pretty decent shape when I bought it, aside from a couple of things that I did repair myself. There was a couple of C-deck flaws and a little chip in the gel coat that I didn't like, and I went ahead and repaired those things, but it was in pretty good shape. And then when I sold it to the new owner, they again had no problem taking it with 260 some hours because it showed so well. I had kept it indoors and I took really good care of it. Now, I have been lucky enough not to encounter any mechanical errors outside of warranty so far. So now I need to knock on wood for saying that. But I also have owned 3 other boats that I built brand new, and I got those with basically no hours, or like 1 or 2 hours from the factory. But I mainly wanted to give you examples of the ones that I bought with hours and sold with more hours. So to kind of summarize my examples, I obviously have bought boats with 200-ish hours, and the boat that I sold with the most hours had over 600 hours on it. And in my experience, the number of hours on a boat does not have as much of an impact so long as it was taken care of properly. Obviously, the same goes for most vehicles, but there is a certain number that I believe that when you get to that point, that it hopefully has been taken care of very, very well. Otherwise, I think you have a lot more potential for failures. So now I want to talk about whether or not I would take a newer boat with more hours on it, or I would take an older boat with less hours on it. So let me just provide some examples. So let's say I'm in the market for a new wake boat and my budget is allowing me $100,000. And let's say that I find a 2017 boat that has 300 hours on it, and I find a 2015 boat that has 150 hours on it. So to me, it's going to depend on several things, but let's just say that those boats are almost identical as far as options and performance and all those different things. Of course, that's probably not going to be the case, but you got to rule out some variables. Those are kind of things you're going to have to determine on your own. But let's just say, for comparison's sake, that these boats are pretty identical in performance and options, and the newer boat has 2 years of warranty left on it. Okay, so in this scenario, I would take the newer boat every time. Now, let's shift it back a few more years, and let's say neither boat has a warranty on it. Then I would probably base my decision off of how well the 2 boats were taken care of. So let's say now that we're talking about a 2015 with 300 hours on it and a 2013 with 150 hours on it. Again, basically identical as far as options and performance for comparison's sake. If I went and looked at the 2015 and it had been stored outside, and I went and looked at the 2013 and it had been stored inside its whole life, then I would probably take the 2013 in that scenario. So again, circumstantial, and you'll want to make sure that you pay attention to those details that matter the most. But that's my opinion on that subject. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is the level of hours that I would probably shift my concern quite a bit. And myself, I probably wouldn't be buying a boat beyond that. But again, it's circumstantial, and I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying that you should do as much research as you can and make sure that it's going to work for you and that there's not any problems. And keep in mind that when we talk about boats, remember I talked about the video where I compared mileage on a car to hours on a boat. And one of the things you got to think about is boats are always around water. So there's a lot more corrosion that can happen. Also, boats don't have suspension. So things tend to rattle loose going down the road, even when you're going over choppy water, things like that, things tend to rattle loose. And also wake boats these days mostly surf, and that means you're usually running your engine at a higher RPM most of the time. And even wakeboarding does that as well when you compare it to a car that you're driving around town or commuting every day, whatever you may be doing with your car. So keep that in mind. Even though I did compare boat hours to car mileage, it's a totally different thing. So that being said, obviously, if I'm thinking about buying a boat with a lot of hours on it, I'm probably at a point where my budget is only allowing me so much, and I'm trying to buy a boat that has as many options and performance value that I can with my budget. So that's where you start running up against, hey, should I buy this boat that has 500 hours on it? Should I buy this boat that has 300 hours on it? Should I buy this boat that has 800 hours on it? I think a lot of that depends on how you're going to use it. If you're just going to use it, a few times out of the year, you're taking family out here and there and just kind of enjoying it, having fun, then, higher hours I don't think are going to matter so much because you're not pounding it with more hours. Now, in my scenario, my average in the last few years has been 100 hours a season. My biggest season was about 190 hours. I know there's people out there, that maybe live in a southern state or maybe even you run a school, something like that you're putting, maybe it's 100 hours a week on that thing. So you're really, really pumping out the hours on that boat. A lot of it may depend on, what your use of the boat is going to be initially. But when it comes down to it, again, I'm going to go back to how well was that boat taken care of? Did they take it into the dealership for every single maintenance? Was it stored inside? I don't take my boats to the dealership because I'm so far away, but I do all the regular maintenance. And did it have engine trouble? Does it sound good? Didn't you can do simple checks like pull the dipstick, and if the oil's black, that means that they don't really care that they're going to sell you a boat that hasn't had an oil change in a while. I personally have not sold a boat that didn't have clean oil when I sold it. On the boats I've sold, I had either done an oil change within the last 20 hours, or it had a fresh oil change because it was in winter layup, and I do that as part of my winter layup. So there's little things like that you can do to check it out, but a lot of it you can tell when you see the boat. Is the inside of the boat filthy? Does the motor have rust on it in spots? Little things like that. Check the dipstick, like I said. Somebody that takes care of their boat well will not want you to see their boat in a dirty, rundown state. They will want it to look sparkling, and they'll be worried about a tiny little scratch on the bottom of the boat, whereas you'll be worried about big scratches. So it's usually pretty easy to tell little things like that. So that being said, if a boat was really well maintained, then I would not be scared of the hours until it gets up to about 1,000 hours. Then at that point, I'm going to want to make sure that thing runs well on the water. I'm going to want to take that thing out on the water and try everything out on it before I'm going to feel comfortable buying that boat. I'm not saying that I wouldn't buy a boat with 1,000 hours on it. If I was in the situation where I had a specific budget and the only boats that I could afford were those higher hour boats to get the performance I wanted, I would definitely buy a boat with 1,000 hours in that scenario. But I would want to feel really comfortable about it. So I would want to go take it out and try it out and make sure everything worked on it. Maybe even take it to a local dealership and have them go through and check the mechanics out of it. The same thing that people do with cars these days when they're buying a used car. They'll go take it to their mechanic and just have them kind of do a review of it. Now, if the boat was not well taken care of, and I wasn't looking to like flip a boat, like for example, take something that was in tough shape and make it look great and kind of flip it for a profit, but I was just looking at it to own it and use it, then I would be concerned at probably the 200 hour level. Like I told you on my 2007, anywhere between 200 and 400 hours. If that boat was kept outside and I pulled the dipstick and it was black, that's when I would be concerned. I probably would not want to buy that boat, depending on the circumstances, if it had not been maintained well and it was anywhere between 200 and 400 hours. Now, anything under that, chances are, as long as the motor turns over, the prop spins, there's no holes in the boat that are making it leak, so you can kind of do a water test with that stuff. Then chances are, even if it's dirty or it's been kept outside, that you're still able to bring it to a pretty nice state, clean it up and fix some things on it like I did with my 2007, and then you can get that boat to run for many more years, just because it didn't have time to get too messed up, hopefully. So that's my take on boat hours and how many is too many. So I hope this information was helpful. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. And if you have any thoughts on this video or ideas for future videos, please leave them in the comments below. If you are new to this channel, please subscribe and click that notifications bell so you can be notified of my future videos. I'll see you next week.